Hello and welcome to Stockton Junction. So today's video is a quick review and a build of this scale model scenery kit. It's the Polsue Barn and Workshop kx084. So what do you get? Well, first of all you get instruction book, and as always with scale model scenery, which is brilliant, is a very comprehensive assembly instructions. Can't go wrong with that. You also get a parts sheet, so really good. So quite impressed. So look, I've been looking, I had a quick look at it. So you've got obviously the wraps, and they're brilliant quality printing. I like the stonework on that. It looks really good, really realistic. So we have two of those sheets. And then obviously if I move those to the side, we have the main parts. This came a little bit broken, but it's not a big deal because it doesn't matter, it's going to come out anyway. No parts are broken. Got the roof trusses, thinner sheet with the doors, etc. So, but one thing I really like is this tile sheet, which is pre-weathered. They look really good. I think they're going to look absolutely amazing when they're on there. This is a new sort of thing they've been doing, and I've got to say, very impressed with it. It looks good. So I'm going to start getting the parts ready, and I'll come back and show you how we're getting on. I'm not going to just video the whole thing, it just take too long and it'd be a bit boring, I think. So I'm going to show you as the build progresses, so I'll see you in a minute. So the first two parts to go together are these two. Just a quick one. So when you cut them out of the sprues, you do get these marks here which are raised slightly. You can just use a file or a bit of sandpaper, but I find it's just as easy to just gently scrape over them like so. And there's some inside the windows, so I need to do those as well. Only takes a second. You don't need a lot of pressure, but obviously you've got to be very careful not to cut your fingers off, and on the bottom as well, because I've worked with knives like this for years, so I'm pretty good at not cutting myself. So obviously be careful if you're not used to it. Maybe use a file or a tiny bit of sandpaper, but you do need to file those flat, especially like in the windows and where there might be joins, or otherwise things won't go together properly. So I'm putting the first two parts together. Now one of the excess pieces is this. It comes out the top of where these two are joined like that on the sprue. Now what I find is, using a piece like this, I find the better end when you're gluing things like this. If you get a bead of glue, I've already wiped it on the inside here, I use that just to wipe up in a corner like so, just to get rid of any excess glue. I find that works, something like that works really well, and obviously it's a disposable piece, so it doesn't matter if you get anything on it. So that's quite a handy little tip for you. So I've got the four main walls put together, as you can see here. You can use those like metallic or magnetic squares and things like that to get the walls dead straight. With these boards here, obviously you've got the lining pattern, so I use one of these corners here, as you can see. So I'll use this corner, line up one wall with that line, and make sure the next line is level as well. Then I know that that is square. So that is how I tend to use it. I use the boards, but those magnetic sets are pretty good, so worth investing in one of those as well. I have been thinking about getting one myself. So we shall move on to the next stage once this is dry, because obviously I need to let all four of these set for a decent amount of time before I start fiddling with the wrap on the outside of it. Right, so I've set this aside to dry for now, and the next job will be to fit the front wall wrap A. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out and cut out the markings for the doors and windows, and we'll come back to it when that starts. in a minute. One thing I was going to film and I forgot to start with is, so I started lining it up and I found that the actual wrap is about a millimetre. As you can see there, it overhangs, whereas it's flush on the top. So I worked out the best way of where these parts fit for the doors and windows, and so it's better to fit it flush to the top. So what I did was I held this in place, I glued this end first, rubbed that down, let that dry before I handle the rest of it. I've just done this next bit. So as you can see, is the next section. I'm doing it in sections, and this is how I tend to work with my finger. Spread the glue over, nice even coverage, like so, and then slowly making sure it's lined up properly, just rub it into place. Get that fog line over. I'm not going to glue the tabs and the doors and that until the rest of it's fully dried. I just give it lots of rubs to make sure no air bubbles pop up, which can happen if the paper gets a bit too wet. Although this is thicker quality paper, so it's a bit better than the printouts that I would print out from my printer, which do tend to bubble. But yeah, so that's looking good so far. So the next job was, after putting the front wall on and I've wrapped all these parts, was to put the rear wall on. So that's done. And then to put this wall on the inside, which is quite easily. I found it easier to place it in there. Hold this, I put my finger this side and bent the tip back and glued that side first, then folded it flat, pushed it down, did the opposite, and then glued this side afterwards. Obviously making sure it's lined up along this top corner, so you get a nice finish there. I'm not worried about any bits that hang over the edges at the bottom. I can either just push them down like that with a bit of glue. You can just fold them over and put a bit of glue on that and it will stay. Or if you really wanted, you could get a very, very sharp knife and just gently trim the edges, but I'm not going to worry about that. I think they'll be fine with a touch of glue and just being pushed over. The overlap's not much. One thing to mention when you put on the back wall, don't glue this tab yet. So as you can see, I've left this section here unglued until we put this bit in and then glue that on. So the next section on this is going to be the insides. They are optional, so you've got 4 inside walls to do. They're optional only if you require them. I'm going to do them just for the sake of this video. I personally don't require them. I don't think I'm going to need viewing inside there, and where this is going to be on the layout, it's going to be a bit further back, so you probably wouldn't see any even if the door was open. But I'm going to do them anyway, just because for part of the video, and just because it's what's meant to be done on it. So we will come back, I'll cut the parts out and we'll show you what's what. So before I carry on with the internal walls, me being typical me, I completely forgot to put these 2 parts on first. So that's this end wall and this end wall. So I'm going to go ahead and do those now. So obviously the first thing we need to do is make sure that's lined up, especially with the window there. So that is perfect. So I'm going to hold that there, exactly the same as before. So I'm doing it off camera, I didn't realise, sorry, my apologies. So hold that back, glue that back down. And what I tend to do is rub a bead of glue along this edge here, where the join is, and push at it, and it quite often, it will get rid of the harsh white line that's there. As you can see, it sort of disappears. Fold the other side back now. And push that into place. You use the ruler there just to push it, make sure it's pushed right down all along that edge there. Could alternatively have used a piece like that just to push in there. I'm just going to line up the next piece, which is obviously the back piece. I'm going to line it up there with the top of the roof, and I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to start at the bottom, and that's when I noticed the rookie mistake that I've made. So just going to, well, the keen-eyed of you out there might have noticed the rookie mistake that I just made, and it just goes to show we all do make them. I do, I definitely do, and I'm not going to edit it out just purely because that wouldn't be right. So what did I do? I put this end piece on the other way around with the window this side. Easy mistake to make. Looking at the picture on the thing, I didn't really look closely at it, and it's at an angle showing it like that angle, and you couldn't really see whether the window was here or here. So it's an easy mistake to make, but hopefully you guys won't make it if you're making one of these, now that you're obviously more aware of which side the window goes. So I hope my error helps any of you that are building it to not make that error. So we're gonna redo this end piece. Just putting some glue on the top. Luckily as well, I did manage to trim this back with the knife underneath with the knife and peel it back to get the piece out, so it hasn't done any damage that's going to show by my mistake, which is good. Just going to glue back to those while I'm there. As you can see, this side didn't fare quite so well, but it's the front edge as well, which could have been a problem, but luckily for me, where it's going on the layout, A, won't show it, and B, I think it's not actually going to be an issue anyway to show up as an issue. Not by the time I've done my usual there, like that, blending it in a little bit. So I'm just tucking the window edging in at the top, and we'll finish that off and I'll come back and show you the next stage. So I'm now going to fit the inner detail, and obviously you can pre-trim it, you can test fit it and trim it. This is slightly, just very slightly longer, but it's not going to make a difference. I'm going to put the ruler inside the edge. Sorry about there, I haven't got the flash on. Just pushing it down with the ruler. I'll put some light on the subject, might certainly help. So yeah, I'm just putting that in there and pushing along that edge. That gets the excess glue as well, but that's pushing it down flat. And a couple of little air bubbles popped up in the middle there. Again, I'm not too bothered. I won't be using the inside, but if you were to look through, as you can see now, the inner edge has gone, and that window's obviously all done now. But yeah, it's looking good. I'm liking the wrapping on this. It's looking pretty interesting. If you were using the model where it might be seen from the front or from an angle where someone could see in this window, you have also got a wrap here that does the top there. Or for instance, if you were doing a derelict barn and using the roof trusses in a broken roof so you could see inside, you might want all these details in. So again, as I said, I'm going to put these in anyway. And I'll come back when the interior of here is finished. So I've got two more parts there to cut out and put in, and this piece to put in, and then we'll come back and have a look at what's next. So I've moved on. I've put all the interior wraps in now on the main part of the building and also in the little small bit there, and we've started to add these parts here, and I've glued the wrap down around the edge now. So the next part is to put the rest of the wraps on the front here. So I've cut out the first one ready, and I shall be putting that on in a minute. So when you cut this piece out here, there's a little black line. Let me just bring that to the camera. So there's a black line there that you need to cut up to that point there, so that when you glue it on, you can fold these bits around the edges. So I'm just going to put some glue on the back. Fit that flush to the top edge there. I'm just going to bring my little ruler in and make sure that's pushed it into the join. As I said, you wrap those two bits around. So it's a bit hard to do it showing it on camera. But yeah, these two bits wrap. So right there, these wrap around on the inside like so. I need to put a bit more, dab more glue on those now. It's a bit fiddly. There's quite not much finger space in there. So like that. Last job is just to put, well, not the last job, but the last job for for this part of it is just to put the final wrap on the end wall here. Sorry. So, which I've already got cut out. Obviously taking note that this darker line here goes on the bottom, so I'm going to line it up for the front edge. line it up along the bottom there. Put that on and we'll leave that to dry for a few minutes. The next part of the build, so we'll be putting this aside, is to start building the doorways up. So you'll need this sheet here, and we'll go through that in a minute, to start building up all the door frames, etc. So the next job is to build the doorways. I've cut out the doors and frames already ready. So obviously the smaller one first I'm going to start with, and I'm just going to glue that together. So one frame goes on the front, like so, and then when that's dry we'll put the other one on the back. So a few little features to these which are pretty good. I'm just going to get the glue out of that corner there. Yeah, if you get a bit of glue on the inside edge of the doorway, just use something to scrape it out so it doesn't glue in a globule or something. So the details on these are pretty good, as you can, I think you can see there. It's got some nice hinge work. You can see where the latch or handle would be. Obviously the inside's not done. These doors do have an option, as you can see there, it's cut through, so you could have the door open or shut if you choose to. For this building on mine, I'm going to be having them shut. It's literally just going to be an old storehouse, so make sure that the doors are lined up together flushly, because if you don't get them dead straight, obviously it's not going to fit very well. But you can see that it comes apart there. Oh, sorry, out of camera. That's where the door could open if you wanted it to. So I'm going to leave these to dry, and then I'm going to be painting these before they go into the building. So let's just have a quick look. I think that's the front. No, that is. So the smaller of the two doors is the end one to go here. It's going to be a tight fit by the looks of it, which is pretty good. Yeah, it's going to fit quite nicely. Yeah, it's going to be a little tight, but that's fine. That's what I don't want it to be loose. Always, just once it's all dried up, you can always run a bit of sandpaper along an edge here to make it fit a bit better. Obviously very fine sandpaper. I'm just going to go ahead and do the other middle-sized door, and I'll come back and show you the more complex door, which is this one. So the next kit is comprised of several pieces. The next part of the kit for the big door, which goes in here, is a bit more complex. So you've got the first door there, that first part there. You've got a single frame here which goes on first. So we can do that. And the instructions are pretty good, but they don't really tell you what order to put this together. So I sort of sat and worked it out a little bit. It does tell you part numbers, and I'm assuming that you follow them in that order. So doesn't actually clearly state that. It is quite important though to make sure you get these on nice and straight. So as you can see, I put the first frame on the outside edge of the front of the door. There is also a little step piece you can put on, so it goes along the bottom edge of the door on the left hand door. It's the thicker of the two pieces here. And that goes along this bottom edge here. And there's 3 more parts to go. So just having a look at this quickly. So you've got the back piece here. So I'm going to turn that over, and then you've got another 3-part frame there. I think I'm going to glue first. I think this is a very well detailed kit. All these little parts just to make up one door. They could have made it pretty simple, but it wouldn't have looked as good. It definitely does look amazing, this kit. See if I put that on the right way round. I've got a funny feeling. So I actually think it fits better going in the middle. So there we go. So I'm just having a go. That's how the way it is sometimes. Sorry if I'm boring you guys to death here. Always test fit parts before you glue them. It's always a good idea. Do you think that's going to look better that way round? I'm sure that's probably how it's meant to have been. It does give the other door a bit of a depth as well, which is quite cool. It's pretty fiddly, but it's all good. So that's in place now. Yeah, I definitely think it looks slightly better that way. On this middle door, you can see there's a little a little line across there. That's for this tiny little piece to go on. So that's going to be fun. You could have put it on beforehand, I suppose. pop it in place. Just line it up with the scalpel in a sec. And that goes in there like that. That looks really good. There's some great detail on this door. So once that's had a nice bit of paint on it, that's going to look really, really good. So I shall come back and show you the next stage when we're ready to fit those into the building. So I've also done, there's this little window which is exactly the same as the door frames. There's 3 pieces, 2 little squares, glue on either one on either to go on the front and back, exactly the same as doing these. I've also cut out the 3 window sills and the 2 barge boards. So when I paint these in a minute with a nice wash, I will do all of these the same colour as well. So I shall get on with that in a second. Right, so for the woodwork, I'm using this MIG enamel wash, and it's the MIG enamel Trax wash, which is a nice dirty brown sort of colour, and it comes out sort of quite nice. I want to sort of distress the old wood looking colour, so it's pretty good for what I want. Also, because it's not a paint, it doesn't go so thick, and this wood takes the wash quite well, and you can build up layers as well and such like, and the darker parts will sit in the recesses like a wash as well. So you can always add a bit of dry brushed weathering to it as well over the top of that. As you can see, it's really easy to do. Just slap it on there, really, not obviously too thick. But that's starting to dry, but it's brought out, where is it? There. Ooh. Sorry. So it's brought out all the details quite nicely as well. I'm not going for too weathered. I want it to be like it's in use and reasonably well maintained by the farmer. So I think that's going to be enough for me. I don't really need to add more. I could put some black across. I might use some black or black wash just across on the hinges to emphasize that they're the old black style painted hinges that you quite often see on old buildings like that. You could also paint them silver if you wished. Maybe they've upgraded their ironmongery on it, who knows. It's up to sort of era you're modelling and such like. So we'll leave those to dry, and then we'll get the doors and the ledges all fitted in. So we need to fit the ledges in the gaps. So as you'll see, if I put this up to, oh, that's the wrong one, sorry. If I put that up to there, you'll see there's a slight gap underneath. That's obviously for the ledge. And as it says in the instructions, to fit the doors, so like so, and then put some glue on the inside to hold it. So that's what I'm going to do. That one I'm quite happy with as it is. Let's see if I can just try to slide this little ledge in for the door frame. Yep, and there we go. That's all fitted. Just make sure it's sat exactly where you want before the glue dries it in place. Don't want it to stick out there. Obviously the ledge sticks out. And I didn't need to do any trimming. I said to mention trimming earlier, or sanding of the doors. I didn't need to do any of that for that one. May need to for the bigger one though, by the looks of it. So I'll have a look at that in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and fit these two next, and you've got the big window here to go in. What I also did, I forgot to cut, I haven't cut them out yet. There's these two smaller ones here which go in the smaller window there, so I've got to cut those out and glue those back to back as well. So I've fitted the doors and windows now. This one was pretty tight, so I did have to give it a little bit of a trim. And that one, if you're planning on putting glazing in that window, it might be better to glue a piece of plastic on the back on there beforehand. It might be a bit awkward to get in there. I'm not going to be glazing it because I'm going to have the roof on. You're not going to see in, and it's an old barn store, so I'm not too worried about that one. So I've just got the big main door to fit now, which does need a little bit of a trim because I don't think I've got them 100% flat there. Not pretty bad, but so I just need to give that a little bit of a light sand and fit that one in. So the next job is to fit all these roof trusses. So at this point you've got a couple of decisions. So one, are you going to have a pristine roof? In other words, full roofing. If you are, you don't really need to do any weathering or painting on these unless you're intending to somehow have a view up into there, but I don't know, to be honest. It's a bit high. You might see up through there, but it would be pretty hard. If obviously you were having a distressed roof with maybe some holes in the roofing, it might be worth painting these up at this point. We're using maybe another, I would say, a brown wash. If I was doing it, I'd use the same wash I used on the doors. But the wood is also quite dark. You could get away with just using it as is if you wanted to. So I'm just going to stick all the roof trusses in because I was contemplating doing a distressed roof, but I have decided against doing that for now. So the two barge boards that I painted are over here. We won't be putting them on until the roof's finished, so you leave them aside for now. But I do like this kit because it gives, you've got options. These go on really nicely, and you've got options on how you want to do the roof, but because you've got this detail here, it really does make it easy. If you wanted to do something, you could quite easily put a few loose tiles so that you could see in through the roof, especially if you're doing an interior. That would look really, really good. So I shall get the rest of these in place, and then I'll come back and show you the next stage. Just want to say before I go much further, just a testament to this, the quality of this kit. As you put these trusses into the little notches along there, they literally hold in place, and they really are good. They've stayed lined up perfectly. None of them have gone out of sync. You know, they've just slotted straight in. The build quality of the design of the kit means, you know, there's no room for error. It's absolutely brilliant. So it is top quality kit, this really is. I mean, look how that looks really good. Just imagine that with a few holes in or something. Seriously tempted on that one myself now, but it wouldn't fit with what I want, in keeping with the farm that I'm doing. If it was maybe an old barn in an old field somewhere, it would really benefit from that sort of job. So the next job is going to be the tiling. So we come to the tiling sheet, and that looks brilliant. Look at that. It's all pre-weathered. It looks really good. That's going to be looking smart on there. So I do like this. I really do. I've not seen roof tiles like this on any other brand of kit. You know, ones that you can put on yourself, because you do these in strips. So this is going to be fun. I've never done anything like that before, so we shall have a go at that next. So it's pretty simple now. Obviously I've put the first one on, I've put the second one on, just covering the line. So I'll show you the next one. Just double check I've got the right one here. So I took the load off, so yeah, that's that one. Now, so what all I'm going to do is turn it over, put glue on the back, make sure it's the right way up with the cuts going down, going from the bottom upwards with the not cut bit at the top. And then all we're going to do is line this up with this end level, so that where the cut goes upwards there, that this bit sits just above the top. So I'm just gonna, didn't get that quite lined up very well. Can't do it at that angle, that's the problem. I'm trying to do it with the camera and it's pretty tricky. So I've got to move it, I'm afraid. It's pretty tricky doing that facing that way for the camera, so it's at an angle for me. But that's the third one. Let me turn it so that I can see what I'm doing better. That's one on, and they do look extremely good. You can see you can see the lines where they overlap. It's the sort of detail you would have expected from the old style of sort of scratch buildings. So definitely Scale Model Scenery have surpassed themselves with these new tiles and these new designs that they're now starting to do. So a lot better than the older kits where you just did a paper wrap over the roof. 10 times better. So well done for that one. I do like the new kit, and they do have a range out that match this barn. I've seen a couple of other buildings that go alongside it, so if you wanted some farm buildings, they do a couple of other buildings in the same sort of brick that would go really well with it. But I'm going to come back, I'm going to continue putting these roofing on, and I'm going to show you something when we do the other side that it's got in instructions, which I do think looks really good as well. So we'll go into that when I get to that side. So I'll see you in a couple of minutes. Right, so we're working on the other side, and what I was going to show you on this part was how it shows you in the magazine, in the instructions, about cutting off bits of tile. So like that one there, I've cut that piece out, so when it's on there, make it look like there's a bit of tile. I've done a broken one there, cut off one there. Something else you could do is you could actually cut a whole tile out and just make it look like it's dropped. That's another thing which I could have done, but I've got past that stage now there really. So just got the last top one to put on this side. But there, this is where if you were making a distressed one, you could have just cut these short and left a whole big patch with a hole in the roof where the tiles are all fallen off, that sort of thing. So make sure the last two obviously match up. And the other thing to be aware of when you're putting these on, it does tell you in instructions, make sure you've got like a short tile, long tile, short tile, long tile as you go up, so that they don't match, they're not all touching each other exactly the same. So the next sections are going to be doing the steps for the outside, which I've just glued together. So what I do, quite simply, I put the long piece down up against there like that, so that we've got a flat edge. Put the next piece in and glue it in, next piece glue it in, next piece glue it in, so they all sit flat on the board. I know it's a bit outside, but so it sits flat on the board, and then it's got something to push up against, so that we get a nice straight edge along the back there as well. So that's very simple. And the next part is doing the two roofs to go on here and here. So I've cut out the two roof wraps there. So the next job is to glue those in place. Just line up those corners there like that, and it should slot into place. So you're trying to line up these corners like that. Pretty simple. Leave that to dry for a few minutes and then wrap the edges round, and the same with this one. And then once that's dry, we've got these to go on the opposite side, which will be the underside, just so that if you were looking up you wouldn't see the plain card. So they, you know, it's pretty good detailing there. So I should do that and I'll come back to you in a minute. Right, so now we've done the main wrap, it's time to put the under wrap on for the underside. So obviously they've made this to fit that dead on, which is fine. The only problem I find is it leaves that horrible white line. So you've got two choices: one, colour that line in, or how I'm going to do this, because it will set it back, as I'm just going to trim that much off. So get my scissors. I'm going to trim the end off there. Sorry, I sort of the camera a little bit, and the same there. Approximately. The reason I'm doing obviously that is to get rid of that edge, and because this has got all this here on the overlap, we can pretty much get away with that now. I'm just gonna because what you've got to bear in mind is you've got the framework here, so what that means is now you won't see that white edge at all, and the framework is going to cover it, so you'll only see that anyway. You won't really see any of the other bits. So that will sit like so. Need some more glue. So I'm going to finish this one off, get these roofs on, and we'll come back to looking at the steps. So I've cut out the wrap for the steps, and the first thing to note is when you're cutting out these bits there, can you see the little lines go all the way to here? So you're meant to be cutting it like so all the way through, because these bits fold around. And I'm going to put some glue on the sides of the steps. And what you'll be doing is lining that end with the line there. So I'm going to turn it over and line that up between those two V's, and make sure it's lined up with the cuts lines for the steps themselves, so that they fit and wrap around there properly. As you can see, they're going to go round. So it's just a case of folding tabs. So the top tab, we've got the bottom tabs, we've got the end tab. I think it's probably better to do the top and bottom tab first before you do the end tabs, just because that holds it in place a bit better. Just put some and that's that so far. We've just got the little tabs to do. So I'm just going to bend those back so I can get some good glue onto them. And you could use obviously a board or a piece of wood or anything there. Like I have my triangular piece, I've put that down somewhere. Just going to push that down to make sure it's a nice tight round the corner there, and pushed down into the steps nicely. as we don't want it sticking out and lumpy, because the next stage will be pretty hard to do otherwise. And that one's not gone so well. I have to get there. The glue's sort of dried a bit on those now, so there's always one that's a bit fiddly on things when you're doing things like that. Always the way. So again, I'm just going to push those down, and they go around there like that. Make sure everything's stuck down nicely. That one's not stuck down very well. Better, because the next stage is we're using this piece here. Now you can colour these edges in again if you want, but we're going to start off just going to glue the top. So I'm going to use that edge there. I quite like that piece. Get that on there nice and straight. It's got to be dead straight for this next part. If it isn't straight with there, you're going to go all wonky and come off the sides as it goes down. So what we're doing, I'm going to leave that to dry for a couple of minutes, and then we're just going to literally start folding the steps in and gluing down like so. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to glue on here, nice and wet, not too thin, because I want it to make the paper a little bit flexible, but you've also got to be careful not to rip it. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to get my metal ruler and push that down, making sure it does go in there properly. This is where you've got to be careful though, not to rip the paper, but make sure everything is stuck down before you move on to the next step. It went off slightly there, and it's getting really fiddly. So just going to fold the bottom tab underneath, so to make sure that's all in place. And that, I need to move the board out the way because I need a flat board. This board here has got a bit of a bow in it, so obviously you need this on a flat surface, this on a flat surface, and then you're going to a bit of glue on the back. And I'm just going to line that up with the little step there and push that into the building, as you can see there. So that looks pretty good. Obviously making sure you are on a nice flat surface, and there we go. And that is the last parts of the kit. So obviously I just got to wait for this to dry before I start picking it up too much, but it won't take long. But I think that is a pretty good kit. So what we'll do now is we will take this down to the farm area on the layout, and we will have a look at what it looks like in situ with the other buildings etc around, because I want to get that area finished next. So I changed this building from I got this one because it looked better than the one that I had got in there. I think I'm just hoping that I've got enough room for this one in there. I should have, just about. Anyway, I'll see you in a second at the layout, and let's have a look at it. Well, that's where I was going to put the building, as you can see down the side there. So I think once I've got it bedded in with a bit of grass and bits around the edge and stuff, it's going to look pretty good. So I've still got all this area to finish off anyway, but I'm quite happy with it. I think it looks really good. So my thoughts on the kit: so for quality, 10 out of 10. Ease of building, 10 out of 10. It's pretty simple, pretty easy to do, as you saw in the video. So even sort of like beginners could probably do this kit. Instructions are pretty good. Don't know what else to say really. It's just a quality piece of design. So I think Scale Model Scenery have done well with this one. As I said, there's a couple more kits in the same series that are available as well. I'm now thinking that I want to change the brick paper or the brickwork on that building to match that one. That would be pretty good. So I might do something like that. I know that Scale Model Scenery sell the roof tiles, so I might well do that one to match in the same sort of stonework. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully the farm area will be coming together next, and you'll see this when it's sort of bedded in a bit better with a bit more scenery around it, and it'll look more in place. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Well, it's not quite finished, but I've got the barn in place and some of the scenery in. I've still got a bit more to do yet to put some more bushes and things in and tie it off. I've also fitted a light on the outside there, a little swan neck light. There's also one being fitted on the outside of the big barn, and an interior light for the barn. And I also have the lighting, so the building's being glued down in place. I've got some weight on it, but that's got lighting in as well. So the farm scene is coming on nicely now. And what else have I been up to? So I've started to put in a vegetable patch along the front here. So, and obviously the tractor barn there, it's got its fuel supply with a little pump. But yeah, it's getting there. I'm quite happy with it, and I'm very happy with this barn building here. It looks really good. So thanks to Scale Model Scenery for that, making that kit. It looks really good in place, and I would certainly suggest trying out some of their kits. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.